Closer. Okay. So, welcome. I think we'll start. And it's amazing to be here, all four of us. And I thought what we'd do is, since we've got the drumming and we've had Sam with the most extraordinary 2,000-year-old songs and stories, is to make a tiny bit of connection to what we've already done in here today. And my guess is it's about falling in love with each other and with the world. It's an expanded sense of self. We had a hilarious gathering about re-enchantment, stars, nature, insects, bees, and our heart activism, a different way of activating our hearts. And I guess in a quite a natural sort of flow that takes us a little bit more into falling in love with the invisibles, with a sense of wild souls and sacred lands, ceremony, ritual, and the ancestors. And we're just so lucky to walk into a space which is incredibly contested. I come from a country where our ancestors have been ridiculed by our colonizers, have been regarded as primitive, as insane, and as witchcraft. So this is not I think for some of us, it's not a soft area. It's not a esoteric sense of, well, if we were all cool, we could just connect. It comes with incredible torment. And at the same time, we have these wonderful gifts of Carolyn Hillier. I only know her from working with her in her own land with Nigel. And I used to think that she couldn't separate from her land. I didn't think she could come to another place and be a human, because I would imagine this whole of Dartmoor coming with her, with the ponies and the song and the wilderness and the moon vigils. And then suddenly she's here and she's her, you know. And after lockdown, where we've spent so much time connecting invisibly but visibly on Zoom across continents, I've stopped knowing what's real and what isn't real. So we have Carolyn. Andreas I know by reputation, not by being with him. And I don't want to read CVs because that's super boring. But the thing that it says, it screeches out, is a Swedish storyteller, a scholar of Norse myth. I mean, how cool is that? Norse myth. And it's like unbelievable. He's a writer, he's an ecologist. He's planted over 200 new woodlands and wildflower meadows across the UK. So I wondered if we could have dinner afterwards. Yeah. And then there's this light touch at the end of his story about unearthing old legends, forgotten folklore, and endangered Norse languages. You know, wow, who is this human? And then Mama D, she writes at the bottom, I want to cry actually. She loved you before we came here, and will after we are long gone. She loved you before we came here, and she will after we're gone. She's a plant whisperer, and she embraces the mysteries of the primordial. And when we imagine what it might be being human, I'm so tired of the same old story, you know, about how we're not connected. We just are. We just really are. And I get the enlightenment. I get the disparities, the inequalities, the tragedies. I get that. What I'm so curious about is we connect. We just do. Myself, I come from a land where our ancestors are part of everyday life, with great gravitas, and they are unbelievably bossy. It's like a village when decisions are made. And it's a very kind of messy, dynamic kind of thing. You don't sort of chant 3 times and you're super respectful every day in Pakla. We talk to them. It's a Southern African tradition. And at the same time, we've forgotten the ceremonies. I think we've forgotten the ceremonies. Even those of us who used to know them easily, they've become a little distant. So our time with you together, which we hope is also messy and probably overrun with time because ancestors take their own time and it's all got timeless anyway, but we're going to do our best. We thought Carolyn would go first, and then Andreas, and then Mama Dee, and we hope that you will be in love with your own wild souls, with your own wild space, and with the simple, not contrived rituals. Sorry, Carolyn, I've got a bit more to blather on about it. It's not about contriving rituals that we copy or think that we are cool because we know what indigenous is. I'm not sure we do, and I'm not sure we don't. But I think what really matters is that we connect with our hearts, that it's real, that you can make up your own rituals, your own ceremony, with as much formality and profundity, with as much joy and humor, with children screeching in and out. Those are ours. They're not pedantic. They're not brutal and cringeworthy. When you sit and go, oh God, I wish I hadn't come. Not like that. More like that. There's the kind of space that when you've done it, you just feel better. Just say, oh, I've done that. It just feels better. And somewhere in your tummy and your heart, you're just a bit more here. So, we're going to start with Carolyn. Thank you.
Hello, lovely people. So, I've called my part of this offering, Our Prayer Bones Lay Scattered on the Reindeer Road. I've lived for many years in the wild heart of Dartmoor, and that's the place that has shaped my understanding and experiences in connection with the rituals of sacred land and the enduring, vibrant resonance of our ancestor people. For those of you who aren't familiar with those moors, they're often completely empty of human activity, but filled with ancestral busyness. The ritual landscape is intact, and it's dynamic, and it's complex. It's also subtle and quiet, and often hidden from our eyes. So I'm going to start by offering you these words, which are 4,000 years old, a time when these ancestor tribes were herding wild ponies and creating adornment from amber and copper, and weaving with nettle fibre, trading tin into the continental mainland, and wrapping their dead inside the skins of bear. Kamano Grenjo soito Samana soito Nata soito Kamano Kwakuitsu Kamano Kwakuitsu. We remember the magic of our bundles, the magic of our circles, the magic of our songs. We remember all our wisdom. We remember all our wisdom. So if you were at the concert a little bit earlier, you'll know that that language is Proto-Celtic. It's a Bronze Age mother tongue, and it fed into the living Celtic languages that are still spoken today. It's a prayer bone language. So this is a bear totem, and she's carved in the form of half woman, half bear. You can see her there. And she wears time around her belly. Vast swathes of time that have been concentrated and encapsulated into her amulets. In this single finger bone from a primordial cave bear, she carries 40,000 years of time. 40,000 years. 40,000 years ago, when people were beginning to make bone flutes by which to sing the spirits of the land, and small carvings of women as symbols of sacred earth mothers, and shrines where the skulls and the bones of great cave bears were laid out in ritual circles deep below the ground. So this is a prayer bone totem. This is an Arctic reindeer shoulder bone, and this was given by a friend of mine who works with the herds, which I then cleaned and smoothed and painted with symbols and wrote words on. Words that would describe the sad songs of far northern lands, where the dramatically fast disintegration of climate is challenging the existence of people and of reindeer within their own landscape, where sometimes the herds are culled by starvation and thousands of bodies lie in dead piles on the tundra. These are the times to which we are all bearing witness. These are the words inscribed on the bone. Once there were vast herds of creatures with heads carved like arms of trees, from which diamonds fell as they ran, until the world shone crisp and hidden. Here are remembered tales that are needing to be told. Can you imagine how these stories lived when the ice was old, when the north was still cold? So this is a prayer bone totem, a lament. Wildland is infused down to its stone bones with ancestral memory and ancient sacred songs. These things exist there, whether we are aware of them or not, whether we yearn for them or whether we forget to seek them out. They are a truth within the land. And how could it not be so? For every moment in time when a human person has stood at the edge of ice or ocean and sung and walked through forest or mountain or travelled across desert or moor and called out or wept or celebrated or whispered or dreamed a part of our story, our experience of being on this earth, our relationship with weather and season and night, our expression of fear and wonder and loss and trust. Every time we have done these things, we have been woven into the memory of the land. We've become part of the ancestral fabric of the world, a raw mythology of human interconnectedness with untamed nature, a profound mystery that describes our journeys across the wild terrains of our own souls. We may not remember where we once belonged or how the truth of us is anchored into the sacred earth, but our soul land has not forgotten us. She's been singing us since we first placed our feet upon the questing trail. Reach out a hand and we will feel her vibration like a thrumming wire. Listen close and we might hear her tapping slow rhythms onto our bones as her summoning grows strong. Our ancient soul land has always been travelling inside us, and we have never ceased to be part of her dream. This is important to remember, for when this knowing inside us, we can find courage and integrity to hope and create and manifest anything in our shared work of mending what is broken and gathering what is scattered and healing the fabric of our world. The decades during which both my work and my personal journey have been exploring ancestral memory within wild and sacred land, my trail has over and again carried me to the far north, 1,000 generations ago, the glacial boundary swept from the southwest corner, where I live, of what is now these islands, in an unbroken route up to what is now the Siberian Arctic edge. Through those long, unfolding millennia, the glacial boundary slid north and also sank down from the surface of the earth towards dark stone. On the high moors where I live, the resonances of ancient ice and of the ancestor people who live upon it are held deep within the soft curves of hill and valley, and in order to catch a whisper of their cold songs and fragments of the cold stories that remember them, I've been travelling north over and again to physical ancient ice. And there are names for this route north: the Cold Harrow Way, or the Reindeer Road, or we might simply call it home to a forgotten version of ourselves. It's the route along which our ancestor people of these islands have scattered their prayer bones, fragments of their raw experiences and sacred truths as they travelled this earth, fragments waiting to be found and absorbed into our own stories and our own new sacred truths. So I want to invite you to walk with me a short while along this reindeer road. And the place I want to show you is guided and guarded by old women. And what they offer is a memory of our ancestral mothers within this sacred landscape. The ancestral fathers are here as well, of course, and they are honoured by us. But this braid of images comes from the mothers, and it's the old women who are carrying them. So we stand together on the edge of ancient ice, and we call out to the women of our ancient mother lines. Galway o noi bonani, Galway o karetsamewe. We are calling you, sacred grandmothers. We're calling you, kinswomen of ours. And even as they hear our call, these mothers are turning their steps towards where we are waiting on the snow. There are so many of them. They stand behind their backs, long trails of mothers stretching out over the frozen lakes, spilling beyond the skyline and eventually lost far inside dark shadows of time. Across the ice, there forms a river of women's blood, a mesh of women's bones, a web of women's lives into which we are each profoundly, all of us, intricately woven. As we walk along our line of ancestral women, they raise their hands to touch us. We're being wrapped in the enduring life force of these ancient mothers. Each ancestor we pass has given some part of herself to the people that we are now. There are so many mothers whispering inside us. We pass 100, then 500, then 900 generations of women until 1,000 mothers stand behind us in an unbroken line, part of the truth of our bodies and the root of our souls and the mystery of our lives on this earth. And this great tribe of women, older than even the lands and the seas in the forms that we know them, they hang through the years like beads on a necklace, everyone linked and cascading past all generations and rolling migrations and sacred relations to earth. Our primordial ancestor women are each holding a cord, and they're raising the cords in their hands, and they're starting to wind them onto spindles that hang from their belts. And all around us, the cords are now tightening, and we are being pulled close to each other. A vast net of connections that draw us together. For the cords form a map of our ancestor mothers, not a single straight line, but a web that spreads wide over borders and cultures and histories and lands. And the ancestor women speak. You all are the people, and you all belong here. You are grown from the home of this planet. You honour the soil and the sea and the stone that sustain you. You honour this earth that remembers your souls. We are the bones that await your wild prayers. It is into our laps that you will lay your own bones. So, we will keep walking and sitting and sleeping and growing on the land, absorbing her clear breath, absorbing her deep pulse, absorbing the dust and the mud and the fire and the salt and the ice of her, until the song of our own soul land moves deeply within us, a song that will empty us and fill us and mould us into new and ancient forms until we have again become the song of wild sacred land. We will be sung back to our source, where we will find the integrity and the courage and the imagination to hope and create and manifest anything in our shared work of mending what is broken, gathering what is scattered, and healing the fabric of our world. 2 lines just to finish with. Kamano kwakwitsu, we remember all our wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Beloved, the holy tree is growing in our hearts. And from joy, the holy branches start. And all the changing color of its fruit have dowered the stars with merry light. The surety of its hidden root has planted quiet in the night. And the shaking of its leafy head has given the waves their melody, and made my lips and music wed, singing a wizard song for thee. En ask vet eg standa, heteryg Drasil har Badmos invita årin, Thadan komma dögvar taurs i dala falla, ständer eufir grön i urdi brunni. An ash tree I know stands, a high tree sprinkled with starlight. From her come all the dews that fall in the valley, and she stands forever green over the well of memory. The well of memory feeds this tree. Each time we forget a little bit of our grandmothers, each time we forget a little bit of where we come from, the tree suffers. Nature suffers. Of course, the tree of life symbolizes all the growing things. So memory is a liquid and a water in the well. Each morning you saw her in the image of the far north. Urd stands each morning and collects the memory of yesterday. She's not so keen on the sun gods. She does, from time to time, she might appear in a Zen monastery here and there, but she believes that the past grows the roots of the tree, and she finds memories too precious to do away with some fashionable spirituality or the latest craze. So she goes every morning and collects the dew, and all the memories that she collects are all the good and the bad. And she pours that into the well, and that feeds the roots of the tree. Her name is Urd, probably one of the most forgotten goddesses of this land, really. Her sisters is Verdandi and Skuld. Urd symbolizes the past. She grows in the past. All time moves towards her. You know what I find interesting is how we always have this Mediterranean idea that we're moving forwards in time. It's somehow in us. But when we read the old Eddas, time moves backward. Where we will end up is in the well of memory to feed the tree. We become nourishment for the roots of the tree. A beautiful image on top of the well of memory, there are two swans that represent the god of love. Frey, Yngwe. Now, the name for Yngwe is the name that they call the Angles who worshipped Frey. And that is why we have the name of England. It is the land of Frey. And if you imagine the two swans now swimming on top of the well of memory, it's a whole other thing, what we are walking. What's wonderful in Sweden, they still dance around his phallus and his erection every summer solstice. And even till this day, they haven't managed to get rid of that ceremony. That goes on, and it's gone on probably since the Bronze Age. But the Eddas are a funny thing, this heritage that we have, these world literature. It's a strange story. They were hidden in the medieval times. They were only found in 1643. So the Eddas are called the grandmothers, and they are, they call them the poetic Edda. And in 1643, a bishop found the skins. He didn't burn them. There were skins. There were 43 skins. He didn't burn them. And which family kept these skins with all these texts, we don't know. It happened in Iceland. But in the bishop in Iceland, he gave the skins to the king of Denmark. He didn't burn them. He didn't destroy them. And the king of Denmark kept them till the 1970s, until he decided to send them back to Iceland. But guess what? No one could figure out how to get the skins to Iceland, because everyone thought they would be too risky to put them on a plane. I mean, the chances of a plane crash, very, very small. But everyone refused. They must not be put on planes. They are too precious. So what's the longing at this point? So they put them on warships, and the entire army escorted them back to Reykjavik. And that was 1973, I think, 74. And the wonderful thing around that time, and that's why I'm sitting here, is a revival happened. An old man with a big beard, he went up to the Reykjavik parliament and he claimed that we should marry under the old gods, we should live under the law of the Eddas, and everyone laughed at him. But when he left the building, a lightning struck. It's all on Wikipedia, I'm not making this up. A lightning struck the building. No one has ever doubted that the old gods are alive since then. And it is from that, his name was Bengtinson, and he was someone who could speak to the Huldur folk, the hidden people. And it's from that the old revival of heathenry and the old revival of the old custom really happened. But what do we find in the Eddas? What are the stories that are in there in these strange animal skins? Well, one of the major stories which I want to share with you is that there is a reconciliation ritual. There's a reconciliation ceremony. And it happens between the spirits of nature and the gods of the sky. Now, a war broke out, and a great war was fought between the spirits of nature and the gods of the sky. They fought constantly over a mistreatment of a young woman. Her name is Freya, the goddess of love. And they gathered under the tree of life to make this reconciliation. And as they did, they mixed their tears, they mixed their spit into a vat, which is called Udrerir. And I will tell you this, it is potentially the original Grail. It is one of the most inspiring stories that the medievals and the knights of the Round Table believe of this reconciliation. It is said that at the bottom of this vat is the reconciliation of two opposing spiritual forces. But this reconciliation happened in the world of the gods, but not here. Not here. Not in this world. So the journey we must take, that the Eddas are teaching us, is that we need to gather together and we need to share the grief of what has happened, of all that which is indigenous of the earth and of the air, and we need to find the strength to reconcile this. So this is not a bunch of Vikings with horns writing these types of books, right? Or poets. These are a profound wisdom tradition. So the question is, how do we begin to light a star above our mast to travel in that direction? Because it's probably too early to do that. It is very hard to reconcile authentically. This is not a joke. We don't reconcile like that. It takes time. But one thing is for sure, that when the reconciliation happened in the world of the gods, in the creation myth, they tell us that the crown of creation, wisdom, was born from that vat. You cannot have wisdom without that reconciliation. And the creature that was born from that vat, his name was Kvasir, and it means wisdom. So there is one instruction. And then there is another one, which for me has been a personal one for a long time. How do we bring life back when there's so much death around the world right now? How do we jump up and live again? And the Eddas say that the goddess of death, she has an instruction. Her name is Hel. If you see one side of her face, it is a blossoming branch. She is the woman of the dawn. It is the most beautiful woman you would ever see in your life. The other side of her face is like dead skin stretched over her skull. She's both living and dead. And she tells us in the Eddas, she says, if you want to bring life back to this world, you have to learn to weep. Everything has to learn to grieve. Not despair, grief. And that allows a regeneration of the tree of life. Those tears can bring the roots back alive again. They carry in them memories. And the grieving ritual is part of this reconciliation. But she calls not just us, she says to the stones to grieve, to the trees, to the mountains, to the sky. And the gods, they hear this and they send all the riders out to all the different directions, and everything starts to weep. Except one thing refuses to cry. Ungratefulness, unthankfulness. Says, her name is Tok, a giantess. She says, I will not cry for the light. My eyes will be dry. And her name means ungratefulness. It's a big learning to have gratitude. I don't know how we get there, but maybe we need to get there after we have the grief. Maybe we need to earn it in that way. So there is a little bit of central stories of the Eddas, of the ancestors. There's a terrible cultural appropriation happening when it comes to the Vikings, I have to admit. They never wore horns on their helmets. And the stories of the raping and pillaging, it's for the history books, but it's usually written by the Holy Roman Empire. So let the star rise, let the wave break, let the flame leap. If your hearts are wise, I hope some of these words are for you to keep. Thank you.
Greetings, family. Am I hearing the whispering of greetings? After listening to Caroline and Andreas, I feel that I need to abandon this piece of paper and respond to what they made me feel. I sit here, a woman of, it feels like a twinned ancestry where the chain of women stretching back into the dark mists of time meet me in that darkness. And yet, inside me also is the mix of newer heritages that come from those ancestral people being carried across the Atlantic and all the breakages and the building up of ungratefulnesses that imperil the world that we inhabit. We do not speak of land because very recently we've seen that land connotes something like to arrive at, to conquer, like landed gentry, to impose oneself upon the earth and to deform it into something that is territory. So no more land, more earth, and getting dirty and soiled. One of the ideas was to talk about the primordial, and so I was looking up what does that mean? Prime, beginning and order. The order of things at the very beginning that we don't know, that we've forgotten, that we have failed to reconcile with. And is it so ancient and so old that we can no longer connect with it? We're like each of us miniature universes expanding into more entropy, more and more disorder, moving away from the places of our source. If we can really go back into those dark mists of time to reconcile with all of those so very different ancestors, including the ones who look like the ones around us on the ground and surrounding us, if we can reconcile with these beings, certainly we're going to have to do it through gratitude, through the kinds of connections that means our hands get soiled. We don't work at the grassroots, we work at the grass stems. Most activists. Grassroots means down. You have to go into the soil and get your hands dirty. Yeah? Am I talking rubbish? Right? So it's quite a work. How can something so ancient and so sublime as the primordial be in our everyday lives? This is a question I've been asking myself. Is it not too holy and sacred to be present in the normal that we're all going to go back to at the end of this period of festival? The everyday washing up and ironing and going to work and 9 to 5. Can we bring this into this space? Or are we going to be like a hermit at the top of the hill, you know, being able to do all these wonderful things and be in union with all of what we refer to as nature, as if we are not also nature? But when we